Aviation is a very cyclical industry. We've seen it after 9/11, the recession in 2008, and most recently the pandemic. My mission here at the Cashflow on the Fly podcast is to arm pilots with all the tools and knowledge they need to achieve financial freedom through real estate. This is your host, Sach Bernhardt, and I hope you enjoy it. Hey, welcome everyone to another episode of the Cashflow on the Fly podcast. We have Seth on the hot seat today. He is from Columbus, Ohio. Seth is a former firefighter and paramedic. He is in the real estate space now. He's a real estate investor, has a construction company. He's vertically integrated and very excited to talk about an educational platform that he's also has, which is you have it in the background, right? That's where he's the Firehouse Bros.
Yeah, the Firehouse Bros. Yep.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about that as well on the podcast today. Seth, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I know we've tried to get this going for a couple different times now, so I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited that it's for good reasons though. You were in a couple of masterminds, you were attending a few events,
Yep.
so that just tells me that you're always constantly trying to seek to improve yourself. That's awesome, man. Dude, walk us through your background, man. How did you go from being a firefighter and how did you get started into real estate?
Yeah, so I'll try to keep it short. So I got out of high school. I grew up in North Dakota, was miserable and tired of the cold winters and 60 below zero and 100 crazy months of snow all year. And moved to Florida, and in probably 99, 2000, wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. Went into the fire service after living right next to a fire station for quite a while, and just thought, man, this is cool. These guys drive by all the time. I'm like, what would that look like to do that? So I went down there and got involved and got educated from them, and ended up going to college and getting degrees and certifications and licensing and all that stuff to become a firefighter paramedic, and did that for 22 years. And
Wow.
I'd say probably 2012, I was starting to have kids. I've been married now for a while, started having kids, and just realized that my place in life, like I loved my job, but it wasn't keeping up with the lifestyle that my wife and I wanted, or what we had planned, or what kind of had dreamt about. And I was really kind of against the wall. That year I worked 1,000 hours of overtime just to prepare for having kids and to get us established in our first house and all the things that you do as a dad, getting ready for things, or as a husband. So did that 1,000 hours of overtime on top of my normal 24-hour on, 48-hour off shift, with 6 solid months at the fire station out of 12, day and night. And it really affected our relationship. At that time, my daughter was born. I'd come home and I'd be miserable because I'd been up all night and then going all day. And then I had to take care of her. And it put me up against the wall, and I wasn't really sure what to do. And it was really interesting because at that time I reconnected. I don't remember if it was through MySpace or maybe it was early days of Facebook, but reconnected with a guy that I went to college with. And when I went to the fire service, he went into real estate. And when I reconnected with him, he was a multimillionaire doing house flipping, hard money lending, doing some small multifamily stuff. But he was at the time was selling a course. He has a group in Pensacola, Florida called the Pig. And I can't think of I'll think of what it stands for, but it's actually a great name, great group. But he was like, you can attend it regularly down there weekly. And then he was selling a course for house flipping. And so he sent it to me as an MP3. And I remember driving around my car, listening to it, thinking, I got to do something else, right? I got to multiply my time, my value per hour. If I'm going to put out an hour of time, I need to make more than what I'm making at the firehouse. And so I listened to his whole thing, and I'm like, man, real estate and real estate investing, and initially it was going to be house flipping, is really something that I should get into. Reached out to him like, hey, Matt, let's talk. We talked on the phone. He gave me 3 actionable steps. The first one was read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. I did that, completely unplugged me from the matrix and blew my mind. And then I called him back like a couple days. I would say this, he gave me an action step, and within like 2 days I'd read it. And I called him back. I'm like, hey, I'm done. What next? And he's like, oh, wow, that was fast. So go find a local meetup. So I found some local real estate meetups. I was so hungry for change. I didn't care about not knowing anyone. I wasn't scared of, I'm going to sound stupid or I don't know anything. I did feel that, but I had to just push through it. And then the third thing was find a mentor. He's like, I'm in Florida, you're in Ohio. You got to find somebody local to link up with that you can learn from. And so I did that. Again, all of my anxiety and fear, and I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm doing. I had to push it all to the side because I was just hungry for a better life, a better solution. And I knew that if this guy could do it and be a multimillionaire, I knew I could do it. And so I did that. And I ended up finding a mentor, worked for him for a year, managing his flips and his rental properties, and realized in that year that single family was a whole nother job and that flipping was another job. And there were some of them where we were on for months and he made no money. There was something he lost money, but he was okay with it because I'll make it up on the next flip or whatever. And I just was like, man, I don't have the ability to take that risk on. Like if I do a deal and it goes bad, I'm bankrupt or I'm living on the edge right now as it is, and I don't have the extra money to go wrong or to risk it. So I really started, as I was educating myself, I realized that multifamily, as many places as I could get underneath one roof, was risk mitigation. Even though the dollar amount went up on the price of the property, the risk was spread out over more doors. And so it kind of led me to the pinnacle of getting into my first deal, which was a 50 unit. And,
So your first deal ever was a 50 unit.
yeah, first rental I ever owned was a 50 unit, and took it down with another investor that I met through that real estate meetup, and took it down by doing a HELOC on my house. So we lived in the same house for a while. Went to the bank, pulled out a line of credit. I took out 100,000. That other investor took out, I think, 300,000 that he had as an older guy that I built a relationship with. Had a bunch of single families and small multis that he had never done a cash out refi on, so he had a ton of equity. And we worked it out where I would run everything. He would never have to set foot on the property. His cash flow wouldn't change from what he was currently living on. And we did it. And 14 months later, it netted about $1 million. And that was it. I was hooked.
You guys sold it?
No, we held on to it. We just cash out refi.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
Got
no, heck no, I'm not selling that baby.
it. You still
So
have it?
yeah, oh yeah, I still got it. And we probably net a month about $25,000 right now. So between the two, we refied, paid ourselves back all the money that we had put in it. I had to get a couple other private investors along the way because I didn't have enough capital when I got in to do the refinance or to do the construction. Paid everybody back, and then at the end, I think we were left with about 800,000, and bought another. I bought another one, bought another 38 unit.
Dude, that's impressive, man. For everyone that is listening to that, just rewind it. You started off managing these guys' single family properties. You realized it was too much work, it's riskier. In your first deal was a 50 unit deal, and 14 months later, guys net $1 million from the refinanced, and just to hold on to the property, and you cash flow about $25,000 a month.
Yeah, I still got it today.
Dude, that's impressive, man. That's awesome. And when did you stop being a firefighter?
So it was June of this year, actually. I finally left. So I probably should have left a long time ago, but it's part of being a fireman or being in the military or being police. Like really it's more of an identity, and it really is in your blood. And it took me a long time to let go of that and realize that I was doing my family an injustice by staying. I was ready to be this other person. I was super scared that I'd get out and be miserable. And in Ohio, I was too old to go back. So they have like an age cutoff for most fire departments. And once you're past the age of 36, you're beyond employable years. There's some things you can like the city of Columbus itself doesn't have an age limit, but like my place does or did. There's other places that do. And if you're in the pension system for X amount of years, it cancels itself. But long story short, I would be too old. So once I left, I'm done. And I had a partner that I did the first two deals and realized if I wanted to really grow at a fast pace, I should strategically partner up with somebody. So another firefighter I had met through a person we were mentoring, he was also in commercial real estate. And we realized that if we just teamed up together, we could put gasoline on this fire and really grow. And so because the both of us were working, like again, 12-hour days, crazy time that we were working. When I was at the firehouse, he was off. When he was at the firehouse, I was off. And then there'd always be a day where we were off together. But the business, we were able to just keep chipping away and keep growing it while maintaining our W-2s. And then, like I said, I finally got to the point where it was very clear there was a fork in the road that I either had to leave and become a full-time investor or really hamper the growth that we were having and stay in the fire service. And it just got to a point where the risk of injury, the risk of cancer, the risk of getting killed on the job, all kinds of different things was just too great. And then I was missing a ton of time with my family and holidays and birthdays. And when that's all you got, you have to. But when all of a sudden you don't have to do those things anymore, and you're choosing to do it, it's like, I'm out.
Yeah, I love it, man. We have a pretty similar story. If you were to take your story and just literally copy paste it and just put airplanes in, that's it. Missing events, missing holidays. It differs a little bit in the sense that as a firefighter, you're on duty for 24 hours and you're off for 48 hours. So it's very set schedule like that. And when you're flying, you're gone for a couple days in a row. But the same thing, it was just kind of, if I wanted to make more money, it meant I needed to be on the road a lot longer.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you want to work, but you don't. So it's like a conflicting thing. And then things at home are not doing very well, kind of like what you mentioned. So, dude, I love it, man. I can totally relate to that story. What do you say is your particular skill set in real estate? Are you think you're
I would say though, the way that we're structured within our companies, I'm the CEO, so I'm like the face of everything. Tim and I always, if anybody listening's ever been in the restaurant business, I shouldn't say I grew up, but when I was in my 20s, I was a firefighter, but then I would go work in restaurants. So I lived in Florida. The area that I was in was on the beach. So you could make a killing bartending or waiting tables or doing whatever, like on your days off. So I always did that in my 20s. So I always refer to it as like front of the house, back of the house in a restaurant. If you're the customer, you're coming in and you're like, you got to complain about your server or the food, you deal with the front of the house manager, right? That he's not the guy in the back making sure the cooks are doing with their stuff and the food, all the logistics of getting your food out are happening. And so in our business or in our company, I'm the kind of the front of the house manager. The brokers deal primarily with me. I'm kind of like the buffer of deals. So the stuff gets sent to me and I qualify it and make sure that it meets our standards. And then all the networking and all the things that go on with our branding is a lot of people will know me, but Tim is kind of the back of the house manager where if I get a deal sent to me and I'm like, yep, it fits our buy box and it looks like it cash flows and it meets all these initial metrics, then I send it to him and then he will dig in and really underwrite it and put some stuff together. I look at the contracts, but then I send them to him to say, hey, fine tooth comb, go over this thing real quick. What do you think? And then some of that stuff he subs out. We've got some other folks that do underwriting for us and whatnot. As we've grown and as we try to qualify more deals, he can't also take all the time that we want. So we've got two or three underwriters that we know and trust within the country. And so sometimes we'll get a deal and then he'll fire it off to them and they know the metrics that we underwrite things for. So they'll underwrite it and send it back to him and then he just reviews it. So a lot of that stuff.
can you tell me about so the first deal you guys did was a 50 unit, and how long ago was that?
That was probably like 6 years ago, I think is when we bought it.
6 years ago. Can you tell me, fast forward to today, how much progress, where you guys are, what is it your current scope of business?
Yeah, so right now there's three of us in the stream group, and we oversee about 185 million in assets that we have under management. And at some point last year, we vertically integrated because we continued to have problems with property managers not swimming the same direction as we are, and them being a for-profit business. It was very hard for us to take them like the management plan that we talked about and thought up and put together for the underwriting and all those things in these syndications, and a lot of them don't get it, and they don't want to get it. So we decided to go ahead and start managing all of our stuff in house. And then that led to us doing construction in house after we had some bad experiences with contractors. Some were, I quote unquote say Craigslist contractors, and others were like the Cadillac of contractors. Like they both performed at about the same level. So we just thought, you know what, like we're going to find some quality contractors that we know to handle some of the big stuff like big roofing projects or siding or whatever, but all the unit turns and all of the things like that we're going to do in house. So we created a company for that. So we got like 23 to 25 people that work for us. We hired an asset manager. He's got 25, almost 30 years of experience. So really just finding the right people and plugging them in. And it's allowed us to scale. So we've got around 1,700 doors right now that we oversee. 700 of them we're like directly managing, directly overseeing. And then there's about another 1,000 that we're GPs on with people that we either are the lead GP with people that are in the area of that market. And they're kind of like boots on the ground or whatnot, or we're involved in the deal at some aspect level. But ultimately for us, the buck stops with us on those deals. I don't know what you want to say. We're not maybe like in the thick of it with them, but we're on all the weekly calls. We're pushing the KPIs. We're making sure that everything's going well. And then if it doesn't go well or it starts to drop off, then the operating agreement allows us to take over full operation.
Got it. I love it. There's are most of these deals, obviously the 50 units sound like it was more of like a JV deal. And am I correct?
Yeah, the first one I ever did, I didn't even know what syndication was back then. So yeah, it was a JV.
And then every deal after that has been a syndication?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. And would you say that the majority of the investor base that you have in your syndication deals, are they firefighters or is
No,
it
there's maybe a handful of them, but a lot of them are just people that we know or have heard of us, or they're friends of a friend who's had a good experience or whatever. But we primarily do 506B syndications. So everybody has a relationship with us at some level. And then we're constantly networking, constantly meeting, constantly kind of building that initial, kind of getting to that phase one of the relationship so we can present offers to the folks. But that's primarily it, is just people that started with us early on, just word of mouth. And then another part of we've linked up with some financial groups that are allowed to offer things outside of like your traditional financial advisor or financial planner. If they're working for like a corporate entity, they're only allowed to offer these certain things. And so we work with some independent guys that have the licensing to be able to do wealth planning for folks. And we are their kind of real estate people that they go to. So if they've got clients that are interested in real estate or want to get into investing, but they don't really want to become landlords, then he directs them to us. We connect with them, build that relationship. They kind of understand better what we're doing. And then through him, they can invest in our syndications that way. So we've had some success that way. Some self-directed IRA folks we've met with that have a lot of clients. Again, those people want to push their clients in the direction of folks they can trust. It's success that way too.
Yeah, yeah, I've worked with a couple guys like that as well. They don't. It's almost like they present you, but they're not pushing, saying invest with this guy, but just saying like, hey, he's an option. If you guys, we trust this guy. He's an option if you want to use your IRA money.
Yeah, because if you're a high income earner and you've got a great job that you love, or you're a surgeon, or you're a high level executive, or whatever, not everybody wants to give up their job to go do real estate, but they understand that real estate is like the best vehicle for creating wealth and stabilized, and always it's always pushing up. So they don't have to stop everything they're doing to learn it. They can just put it in with our deals.
Yeah, love it, dude. A lot of people preach to do deals that are 100 units or more. Given that you've done a 50 unit, I don't know what the size of all the other units are, but all of the other apartments. But you think the same way, or you don't care whether it's less than 100, more than 100?
Yeah, so if we're going into a new market, like we're looking in Jacksonville, Florida right now. So for us to establish a foothold in Jacksonville, we would need to do 100 units. It doesn't just have to be like one deal. It could be 250 units, or it could be a 70 and a 30. Like it just has to be the size of the portfolio has to be able to sustain having staff on site in the area. Now, maybe again, they're not on site, but if we have to get an office and whatever, it just has to be able to make the payroll. So for us, like in Central Ohio, where we're primarily based out of, or Salt Lake City, Utah, where our other partner lives, we could find a 30 unit or a 40 unit, 50 unit, whatever. And it would make sense because we already have a presence there. But if we're branching out into like a brand new market and we're going to put staff on the ground there and run them through our processes, it has to be a certain size to be able to support that.
Got it. Love it. What's one of the biggest challenges that you face through your syndication career?
I would say one, capital raising is never as easy as everybody likes to make it out to be. I think that's a facade. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of ground to cover. It's a lot of networking and other things. Because again, I've never gotten any capital into a deal from putting a radio ad out or a billboard or a post on Facebook or whatever. It just doesn't happen that way. At least not for us. Maybe there's other people that do it and they crush it and they're just believable. But most people that I know that have ever done our deals or other people's, they know the operator, or they know somebody that knows the operator, or whatever, or there's the reputation precedes them. And so the people reach out and call them, and then they build a relationship, and there's something there relationally. So I think that's probably one tough one. And then the other thing is just being an employer. As we've scaled and having to employ people, I never really thought that I'd be an employer. So that's led to some challenges. But again, it's led us to also hire the right people to oversee those things rather than me have to do it.
Yeah, man, it's tough. You definitely don't think of a lot of things, right? Especially when you become an entrepreneur, you don't think of days off, you don't think of vacations. It's just different, right? When you start hiring people that they're supposed to have, hey, this is how you request a day off. This is how many days off you're supposed to have a week. This is how you call in sick.
Yeah. Yep. And I would say I'll forego pay, right? This is like we joked about that our groundskeeper makes more than we do from the property management company because he has a set salary, right? We'll forego us making any money to hire the right person to be that buffer between us and that stuff. Tim and I did it for a long time, and it wasn't until recently that we just finally bit the bullet. We were trying to manage, like juggle all these balls in the air, and we finally just bit the bullet and hired like an executive level asset manager, 25 plus years of experience. And he's way better at it than we are anyways. So I'd rather just pay him to do it, but it frees me up then to be able to go find more deals, build
Right.
the relationships for capital, like do all the different things that I'm better at than he is, but he's killing it for us. And it's really been awesome to watch. So
Yeah, yeah, I love that. What's one system that you have implemented that has contributed to your success so far?
oh, that's a good question. I think that tracking your KPIs, like actually setting those up and saying when we're like trying to judge employees and whether or not they're actually doing what they're supposed to be, or even for us, like it's very easy to kind of get lost in the white water. If you're going down like a river with white water and you're rafting or whatever, like it's easy to get lost in that turbulence of doing deals or just all of it. But where for us, like the roadmap is the key performance indicators, the monthly and quarterly metrics that we set, or the goals. We'll set like an annual goal, but then we'll break that one goal up quarterly, and we try to break it down into these small chunks so we know if I feel like we can quickly know, are we on the right path or are we not? Like if any decision that we make that takes us away from the goal, we have to say no to. And sometimes it's hard to know that you're actually off the path when you have all these different things going on. And I think that's something that we've learned over the last few years, is that in being able to hire the right people, is because it's hard to see. Somebody just told me this weekend, it's hard to see you can't see what, let me see how if I say it right. You can't see, if you're in the picture, you can't see the frame, right? Or if you're
Right.
so close to the trees, you can't see the forest, or whatever you like. But that's what I feel like is can be really tough, is you can just get overwhelmed with all the things that go into making a syndication team successful, or even a single deal. Like it's a miracle I made it through my first 50 unit without falling on my face because of all the different things. But I wasn't even thinking. It's interesting, right? Because the more you learn and the better you become at this stuff, the more things you think about. And I was just like I said, I didn't know what I didn't know on that first one. Had I known everything I know now, I'd have been like, whoa, what are you doing? You would never want to go do that on your own first, but I just didn't know any better.
Tell me a valuable lesson you've learned through like when you were doing a deal and something went wrong.
I think for me, like just the network, right? I mean, I feel like maybe it's oversaid these days, but like for instance, on my first deal, I met a guy. His name is Jack Petrick. He's a rock star guy out of Cleveland. He was a firefighter, had left the fire service when I met him, which blew my mind. That was the first time I'd ever thought about it. Like, why would you ever leave the fire service? Like, I was doing it as a side hustle. Here's this guy had left already, had 700 apartments. I called him 4 times I can remember, like during that first deal, and every time I called him, I'm like, "Hey Jack, here's my problem," and he would give me he would like when the first time when I bought it and the first like rent came in, I was super short. It almost didn't cash flow enough to pay the debt service, and because we had a bunch of people move out, and then it opened a whole can of worms where I didn't have enough money or people to renovate units because I thought I'd just do one at a time, and all of a sudden I got 15. And so being able to call him and tell him my problem and him give me a solution based on his experience was what made that. Again, a lot of hard work, all the other things, but the guidance is what really made me understand what was important and how to execute. And I think that's something for me is I mastermind or I meet with or I do whatever I need to do with other folks that are farther along than I am. And that's how we've been able to scale and grow in the short amount of time that we've been doing it, or to get to the size we're at in the time that we've been doing it. I feel like it's pretty good, and it's a lot attributed to being in the right room with the right people. So that's probably the number one thing, is being around the right people and just following their successes.
I love it, man. Dude, what do you think? I know that neither one of us have a crystal ball to know what's going to happen, but give me your best thoughts on what do you think is going to happen with the market now that, and especially as it relates to rents, given that we're in the real estate investing space and renting properties and renting units, as interest rates rise with the existing housing shortage, what do you foresee will happen to rents?
I think that they're going to continue to grow up to a point, but at some point, depending on what part of the country you're in, people just can't afford it. People are, especially if inflation continues to rise and businesses really start making cuts so they can make their quarterly earnings. If they start cutting staff or they start cutting people, it's kind of like this weird thing where rents keep going up, but then people can't afford it, and where are they going to go? But I don't. It's like a lot. It's like this. It's like you're chasing your tail. But I think that if people can't, if the demand for housing continues to slow because rents are or the interest rates are so high, people are slowing. Like we were looking to move, and I'm like, I'm not giving up my 3%, 30-year fixed loan to get something at 7%. So we're staying. We're going to make it work where we're at and keep loving it. But if everybody's doing that, then and nobody's moving, which I think is why they're doing what they're doing, it just causes the renting market, the rent market to go up again. If I wanted to sell my house today and I still did well on it, where am I going to go? There's nowhere around the area for me to rent from because again, I'm tied to my area because of school districts and my kids. There's nowhere for me to go. And if I do find somewhere, like you said, that's where being on the other side of this, if I find somewhere, I'm going to be paying top dollar, probably more than my mortgage because it's like the demand is so high. But for those that can't afford it, I don't know. I think it's just going to continue to squeeze the lower class or the low middle class or whatnot. And is rents going to keep going up? Yes. Are people going to get to a point where I think that they can't afford it? And that's going to also affect the economy and more homeless people and more just problems? Absolutely. And our
Mhm.
government can't continue to bail out everybody by increasing the subsidies that they're giving because it's not, at some point we're going to hit a hard stop. I think I would like to believe that you just can't, so yeah, I don't know. It's good to be on this side of things. I put it that way. It's good to
Yeah,
be the apartment owner than being
right.
the guy renting in the apartment because those guys are getting squished or they're getting taxed pretty bad right now. Because
Y-
even for us, we're raising our rents because the water and sewer charges are going up. Like I've doubled my water and sewer bills on some of our properties, and the only thing I tell the team is like, it's got to go back on the tenants. Like, I'm not paying for it when it's an extra $30 for you spread out amongst everybody, or $25, whatever it is. Like, you're going to get that added on to what you're paying versus me having to just lose that money every month.
Yeah, because it's not your fault, right?
No, but yeah,
You
it's
gotta
like I
learn.
said, it's a hard question. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. I think that specifically in Central Ohio, it's a different story too, because like, we're actively developing. A lot of people are like, oh, developers are stopping and it's slowing and whatever. But Central Ohio, I think, depending on where you're at in the market in the country, is having different things affected. We have Intel coming here; they're going to do 100 billion in the next few years. We'll have all kinds of other jobs coming here, and other industries coming here to help supplement and shore them up. The area that I live in right now is going to look nothing like it does in 10 years. And you can look in, I believe, Arizona, where their other site is at, what that area looked like. So for us, we're like in our own little bubble, right? I don't have any problem developing here in Central Ohio. Maybe I wouldn't go do it in South Carolina or Florida or somewhere else, but here it's that's why this market is crazy where we're at right now, and we're full on pushing for development. We're doing a massive project, and I'm not afraid of it because of what's coming here.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I try to reassure some of the investors, regardless of what goes on in the market and then on whatever they hear in the news. Everything is very market related, right? It's so different all across the country. Regardless, some places may start seeing some decline in housing prices and stuff like that. And one, single family homes have nothing to do with our
Right.
business, right? Just because homes are decreasing in value, that doesn't mean that our properties are decreasing in value.
Yep.
And it's very market related, like you were saying. In your area, they're doing a lot of developing, so obviously things are still thriving. I know flippers that went out of business but then it's like people start hearing these stories and it's like, oh, their real estate market is doing bad. It's like, they did not do the right things. They put themselves in that situation to go out of business when they got squeezed a little bit by the market.
Yeah, and we've got developers here locally even that they over leveraged, or they were aggressive in their underwriting, and they were doing stuff on 2019 numbers or 2018 numbers, and then when they go to refi or they go to continue on, like, it doesn't make sense anymore. And so that's the thing, I think, for us, is with cap rate expansion or different things that we're seeing in some of the tertiary areas that we're in, like, we underwrote for all of that. So the deal pencils at, that's why you do those things, right? If you're buying in an area and you're just assuming that rents are going to continue to go up 10 to 13% because they have been in like during the COVID
Yeah.
times and these kind of like these great years, and now all of a sudden you're not seeing that, but that's the only way that deal worked. You should have bought the deal.
Yeah.
I think those are the people I see are going to have problems. Or like you said, the house flippers, they were buying something that only worked underneath this beautiful set of circumstances, and the minute anything tweaks right there, that whole house of cards comes down. And
Which brings us to another point of having multiple exits.
yeah,
If your projector was to refi in year two, and then if for some reason the interest rates are through the roof and the numbers don't make sense to refinance anymore, you're underwriting. Hopefully, you were planning on, like, if that was not the case, if we were not able to refinance, then maybe we just hold on to the property for another 2-3 years until the market gets better, and then we can either sell the property or refinance at that point, right?
yeah. Put it this way, we've got some bridge debt on some stuff that like that was big value add, a lot of construction, renovation, rents were 300 below market, and now it's like our bridge debt is the same loan number. It was bridge debt when the rates were 3% or 3.5%, right? 6% was bridge debt. And now bridge debt's 9%, 9.5%. Look, for us, we're like, what's the point of even refinancing? Let's just stay in the
Right.
debt that we're in, and we can extend it for an extra year if we want to, but let's wait this out and see what happens. Let's give it another year and see where things are at, or another 6 months or whatever, because it makes no sense for us to pay the money to do a refi only to get into the same interest rate that we're already in, or maybe it's a 0.25% less. It just, to me, it doesn't make any sense. So some of those things, like you said, we're adjusting, we're holding on to longer, we're doing whatever. And yeah, maybe your 3 year, I think that's where you get crunched too, right? If the deal only made sense for you to get in, have it for a year or two, and then sell it year 3, and now if you got to hold to year 5, the returns start going down, and the numbers that you told everybody aren't the same because you were going to get in and get out. That there again, that was more speculative, and those are the deals
Right.
that we try to stay away from.
Exactly. Dude, Seth, this has been awesome. We're reaching the end of the podcast here. I'm going to ask you 2 questions. One is, tell me your favorite business or real estate book and that you have read lately, and why is that?
Oh, that I've read lately. Again, I know that we talked about this and everybody has probably said it, but let me just say for those maybe that haven't, is Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. If you listen to a lot of podcasts or whatever, you probably have heard it, but I'm telling you, that book changed my life. If you've never heard of it, listen to it, because being a blue collar guy, I always had to do the work myself. I always had to be the guy that would start the job, finish the job, first one there, last one to leave, like all those different things. And when I finally realized in my first deal that like the scope of work got so big that I could not be that guy anymore, I struggled with that until I read that book. And then even beyond that, once I kind of had my team built out, I realized through that book that there were so many things that I could be doing that were not that were three-dimensional versus one-dimensional. And when I say that, I mean if I went to an apartment building and I'm hanging drywall, all I did that day was hang drywall. If I go out and I pay somebody to hang that drywall and I go out and talk to investors and one or two of those investors invest in my next deal and they invest 50K each, I just made $100,000 basically show up for that deal. That's way more valuable of time. And I consider that three-dimensional because then it might lead to other people coming in. And so anyways, that book really changed my whole mindset. I love that book. It's been around for a little while, but it's one I always go back to. That one, Attraction. They're two common books, but I don't think you can talk about them enough. They're great for business
Yeah.
growing and
I was
scaling.
going to ask you about traction because some of the stuff you said earlier were very, I think we're coming from traction, right? Which was a
Yeah, that's an
goal.
interesting book too, because the first time I read it, I wasn't ready to receive some of the information that was in there. I just wasn't in the position yet to really understand it and grasp it. And
Mhm.
then when I talked to another property manager that runs a company here in Columbus, and everything he does is based off of that. And I'm like, man, I should really go back and read that. When I went back and read it the second time, I read it the second time. I don't know if it was just a different place in business that I was at or my mind was in a different position, but I received a lot more information from that. So maybe, and again, challenging people that are listening that maybe there's a book that you have read once before and you thought you got everything you could have out of it. Like maybe take another glance at it and see if there's some other nuggets that you can get because that's has definitely happened to me on more times than times.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I agree with that. I did the same thing before. It was one of the first books I probably just heard on a podcast, and I was just consuming every content that I could. And I read Traction when I had no real traction in any business, and I read it, and I was like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
But then later on, it makes sense, dude. If you have everything you have so far, right? All your real estate, all your units, if everything is taken away, the money, the real estate, except your knowledge, what would you do to get to where you are today the fastest?
Oh man, that's a great question. If I started back at zero, let's say I had to file bankruptcy and I lost everything, I would probably try to again figure out how do I get into the biggest deal that I can get into with the biggest upside and then just grind it out to get that deal completed because maybe that's a single family house or a duplex or again house hacking is a great option for folks like you're not everybody jumps into a 50 unit like I did, but if I had to start all over again, I didn't have that as that would be because I've had good experience with that and I have a ton of knowledge. That's the road I would go to try to get the biggest deal I could. But if you don't have that, I would try to do that. Like house hacking is an easy way to get into into real estate investing. But I would figure out what the I'd probably stop, figure out what the lay of the land looks like. Again, where's my 5 year goal is here, and then how what's the best and quickest, most efficient way for me to get there. And maybe in that scenario it'd be house hacking, or maybe in that scenario it's me taking my knowledge, going to real estate meetups, meeting other investors, pooling everybody's money together. Instead of I always tell it to the house flippers, rather than take that money and go flip another house, why don't you put it into an apartment building and you'll ultimately get more out of that than you will out of that house flip. If
Yeah.
nothing else for just a tax depreciation. But I mean, I would figure out like what is the what like I said, get the lay of the land and then figure out what's the fastest way for me to get back to where I was at
Yeah.
and do that. It's not stopping, put my head down and just grinding it
Yeah.
out would be the big thing.
Yeah. I love it, man. Great advice. Dude, I want people to connect, to be able to connect more with you. I know you have the Firehouse Bros. Will that be the best way for them to connect? If it is, can you elaborate on what that is?
Yeah, so if they're looking to invest in syndications and they want a sponsor that actually runs their own deals and like I said, has credibility or whatever, they can look us up on the Stream Group. It's the streamgroups.com. So Stream Groups is plural. And you can look at our portfolio and what we're doing there and reach out if you want to invest. But if you're wanting to learn and you're like, man, this all sounds great. Here's where I'm at. I'm in my journey, or I haven't got started, or whatever. We formed the Firehouse Bros to try to teach people what we've learned along the way, especially in my first couple deals. I like to try to be the training wheels for people when they're trying to ride a bike. Things that I didn't have that when I got started, and I feel like we can help people accelerate their growth a lot faster by teaching them some of the things that we've done and what we've learned. And when I was in the fire service, I was always a fire instructor and a medic instructor, and I loved teaching people how to get those skills. It's the same thing that Tim and I do with the Firehouse Bros. So very hands-on. You will get deals done if you're with us, and we review deals all the time. So we get deals sent to us. We go over the OMs. We just it's very hands-on. Is all I can say. And there's not a lot of that out there today, I think. And operations is where a lot of these deals make it or break it. So that's what we try to go over with people. Yeah, the firehousebros.com. They can click on the button for coaching, and then they can check out the Multifamily Academy, which is a 2-day virtual event, or they can do the Command Center, which is, like I said, our kind of inner circle of folks.
Dude, I love it, man. Seth, it was awesome having you in the podcast today, and we look forward to having you soon.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you very much.
If you want to never miss another one of your kids' practice games, spend more time with your family, or simply do more of what you really like to do aside from flying, grab my book where I explain in detail everything you need to know to make this a reality. Go to bernhardcapital.net/ebook and download my book. It's completely free, and I hope you like it.